Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'll start by answering a couple of questions that were asked in comments on the YouTube channel. The first one is, I'll first read the question and then I'll answer it. I'll answer each part of it. Well, what this person wrote was, surely attending, investigating the snake, i.e. ego, leads to the realization that it is a phantom, formless. Is this realization almost immediate? And are we left with inner silence, which in traditional Advaita Vedanta we must then attend to? It is this silence investigation which truly leads to enlightenment and not merely attending to I. Indeed, didn't Ramana state that silence is my highest teaching? So that was the question. I'll now answer it bit by bit. The first part is, surely attending to or investigating the snake, i.e. ego, leads to the realization that it is a phantom / formless. The fact that ego is a formless phantom or demon is not a realization, it's an understanding. That is, if we consider the nature of ego, as Bhagavan has explained it, ego is not an object, it's the subject. So it is not any object of awareness, but it is the awareness, it is that which is aware of all objects. As such, as awareness, ego has no form of its own. So Bhagavan refers to it as formless. And he also refers to it as, he describes it in verse 25 of Ulunabdu as Uruvatra Pe Ahande. Uruvatra means formless, devoid of form. Pe means a demon or phantom. Phantom is actually a rather loose translation. It's Pe is a particular type of demon that will possess people. So that is obviously Bhagavan, that is metaphorical. Bhagavan describes ego as such. But the main thing is it's formless. Formless means, in this context, form means anything that can be in any way distinguished from any other thing. So all phenomena are forms. Each phenomenon is a form because it's something that can be distinguished from some other thing. So forms doesn't only mean physical forms, it also all thoughts, feelings, emotions, likes, dislikes, desires, all these are all the various different forms. All phenomena are forms. So ego is formless because it's got no form of its own. Because it's got no form of its own, it's got no separate existence, because it's only form that distinguishes one thing from another thing. So without form, there are no distinctions. So what ego essentially is just formless pure awareness. But as formless pure awareness, it is not what is called ego. As ego, it comes into existence grasping form. As Bhagavan says in that verse 25 of Ulunabdu, grasping form, it comes into existence. Since ego is formless, how does it grasp form? It doesn't have any hands or arms for grasping anything. So what Bhagavan means by grasping is by being aware of. The first form ego grasps in its awareness is the form of a body, which it takes to be itself. And in this context, a body doesn't mean just the physical form of the body. As Bhagavan explains in verse 5 of Ulunabdu, body is a form of 5 sheaths, Uru Pancha Kosa Uru. The 5 sheaths are the physical form of the body, what is called the Annamaya Kosha, the life that animates that body, what is called the Pranamaya Kosha, and the mind or Manomaya Kosha, intellect or Vijnanamaya Kosha, and will or anandamaya kosha, which operate within that body. So all these collectively are what we experience as I when we rise as ego. So the first form that the ego grasps is this body, which is a form consisting of 5 sheaths. Without grasping of such a form, ego cannot come into existence. That means it cannot. It has no separate existence without grasping a form as itself. And then he goes on to say, so he begins by saying, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikom, grasping form, it stands. That implies that ego, stand here means it endures, it continues. So ego cannot either come into existence or endure without constantly identifying itself as I am this body. And then he goes, so having grasped the form of the body as ourself, we don't stop there. We continue grasping other forms in our awareness. So in the third sentence, he says, Urupatri undam, sorry, Urupatri undu mika ongam. That means grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly. That is the food on which ego, the food with which ego nourishes itself is constant attention to things other than itself, constant attention to forms or phenomena. So as ego, our attention is always going outwards towards things other than ourselves. Outwards in this context means away from ourselves. Inwards means back towards ourselves. Outward means away from ourselves. So the nature of ego is to constantly attend to things other than itself, constantly attend to forms. And then he says, Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. Because it cannot stand for a moment without grasping form. If it lets go of one form, it grasps another form. So this is the nature of ego. It rises, stands, and flourishes by grasping form. In other words, by being aware of things other than itself. But if instead of trying to grasp forms, as it's constantly doing, if ego tries to grasp itself, what happens? Since it itself is formless, when it tries to grasp itself, it thereby subsides and it dissolves back into its source. Its source is its own being, the pure awareness I am. That is, what we actually are is the source from which we have risen as ego. So, as I say, this is the basic principles of Bhagavan's teaching. We need to understand this. Only if we understand this correctly can we begin to put self-investigation into practice. Because until we understand that what we are is not this body or prana, or not the body, the life, the mind, the intellect, or the will. What we are is the I that identifies itself with all these things. That I is ego, which has no form of its own. So when we turn our attention back within towards ourselves, in other words, when we try to attend to ourselves alone, our attention is thereby withdrawn from all forms. So we cease grasping forms and we try to grasp ourselves. And the result is that ego subsides and dissolves back into its source, which is pure being. So it is merely understanding that ego is a formless phantom. That's a prerequisite for the investigation, but understanding that is not the investigation. And if our investigation only leads us to that understanding, it's not led us very far. It's not really led us away from the starting point. So the next question is this realization almost immediate? Well, as I say, it's not really a realization, it's more an understanding. This understanding is a prerequisite for beginning the self-investigation. Once we understand But what we are is not any form, not any phenomena, but that the awareness in whose view all forms or phenomena appear. Then only when we've understood that can we really begin to investigate ourselves. So investigating ourselves means turning our attention away from uh, all everything that is known, away from all objects, phenomena, or forms, back towards ourselves, the awareness to whom all these things appear. When we attend to ourselves, at first, because we who are aware of all other things are ego, it seems at first that what we're attending to is attending to ego. That's how we may understand it at first. But the person who asked this question, he referred to the snake rope analogy. He said, investigating the snake, i.e. ego. So that analogy is very apt here, because what we actually are is Satchit, pure being awareness. That is the rope. Ego is the snake. The snake and the rope are not two different things. The snake is what the rope seems to be when it is not seen clearly. If we don't see the rope clearly enough, we can mistake it to be a snake. But if we look at the snake carefully enough, what do we see? Oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Likewise, if we look at ego carefully enough, we will see what we actually are. That is the whole point of self-investigation. So sometimes Bhagavan describes self-investigation in terms of attending to ego, or as a very popular phrase in English books or English descriptions is holding on to the I thought. The I thought is not an object. The I thought is ego. So attending to ego, trying to hold on to ego, what happens? Ego subsides and we merge back into our source. Just like if we look carefully at the snake dissolves and the rope alone remains, because it was always only a rope. Even when it seemed to be a snake, it was actually only a rope. Likewise, even when we seem to be ego, what we actually are is pure being awareness. So all we need to do is to attend to ego carefully enough, and we will thereby see what we actually are. So there are no two stages, first attending to ego and then later attending to silence. It's not like that. There's only one thing. We attend to I. Now I seems to be ego, which is the adjunct conflated awareness. I am this body. When we are investigating ego, as Bhagavan explained, it's nicely put in Maharshi's Gospel. And in one answer, Bhagavan says, he explains that ego is chit jada granti. And in that passage, he's also, the question is about aham vritti. Aham vritti means, a simple translation of aham vritti is I thought. So it basically means aham vritti is another name for ego. So Bhagavan says, ego is chit jada granti. In your investigation into the source of the aham vritti, you take the essential chit aspect of ego. And chit aspect means the awareness aspect of ego. Therefore, it will unfailingly lead to realization of the pure awareness that you actually are. Something to that effect, Bhagavan says. When he says you take the chit aspect, what he means is when we are investigating ego, we are not investigating the adjuncts that ego mistakes itself to be. In other words, the five sheaves. We are investigating only that is the jada portion, that is the non-aware portion. We are investigating the chit portion, that is the awareness I am, but now seems to be mixed and conflated with these adjuncts. So we're attending only to the fundamental awareness I am. That is what we actually are. So just like when we look at the snake, we will see it is only a rope. When we look at ego, meaning look at the chit aspect of ego, we will see that it is just pure awareness. And this person who asked the question then goes on to say, and we are left with inner silence. That is, silence is the nature. Silence is, in Bhagavan's teachings and in Advaita philosophy more broadly, silence is a synonym for being. That is, the nature of pure being, Sat, is silence. Because being just is, it doesn't do anything. So it is just, its very nature is silence. So the silence Bhagavan talked about is that silence of pure being, the silence that is pure being. So when we attend to ego subsides, and what remains is the silence of pure being, which is what we actually are. And he says, which in traditional Advaita Vedanta we must then attend to. I'm not, that is, Advaita Vedanta is all about investigating the one thing that actually exists. That is only I. And the nature of that I is silence. So if Advaita Vedanta is understood correctly, if we understand the practical implication of all of Advaita Vedanta, that is Bhagavan's teaching. Bhagavan has highlighted the practical implication of Advaita Vedanta. So attending to our own being, the nature of which is silence, that is Bhagavan's teaching, that is Advaita Vedanta. And then he goes on to say, it is this silence investigation which truly leads to the enlightenment and not merely attending to I. That is, attending to I and attending to silence are one and the same thing, because silence is the very nature of I. Ego is that same silence, that same silent being, seen wrongly as I am this body. But even when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, what we essentially are is just that pure being awareness, I am, which is silence. And then he says, didn't Ramana state silence is my highest teaching? Yes, Bhagavan did say silence is his highest teaching. Why is that? Because the very nature of pure being awareness is silence. So what can reveal pure being awareness is only pure being awareness. So the silence of pure being alone can reveal the silence of pure being. So the ultimate teaching is just being as we actually are. That is only when we subside back into our being can we know ourselves as we actually are. So that silence is the state of pure being, the state in which we do not rise as ego. In order to cease rising as ego, all we need to do is to attend to ourselves. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we as ego will thereby subside. And when we subside completely, we thereby dissolve back into the pure being that we actually are, and that pure being is silence. So that was the first set of questions I wanted to answer. Another one, also to do with the practice of self-investigation, someone wrote, I hope you can reply to this. When I sit for self-inquiry, I feel my body self looking at my mental voice, and that voice is my voice, I. From here, what do I focus on for the self-attention part of the practice? Is this voice of the I that needs to be watched, and the watcher being the self-attention, or is it the body feeling of I that I need to focus on? There seems to be a lot of confused understanding here. That is, he says, I feel my body self looking at my mental voice. That is, self-investigation is not one self looking at another self. We are not, that is, the body self it's not a very clear term, but I assume what he means by that is ego, which is our self identified with a body. So as ego, we are aware of ourselves as I am this body. But even when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we don't cease to be aware I am. That awareness I am is what we essentially are. So that is what we need to attend to. We're not attending to any voice. We're not attending to any word. When Bhagavan says attend to yourself or attend to I, he doesn't mean attend to the word I. He means attend to what the word I refers to. If someone asks you, eat an apple, they're not asking you to eat the word apple. They're asking you to eat what the word apple refers to. So just like we understand, if someone says, eat this apple, they're not asking you to eat the word. They're asking you to eat the object that that word refers to. Likewise, when Bhagavan asks us to attend to I, he's not asking us to attend to merely to the word I, or to the voice. I don't know what the voice means, but we are to attend to that which the word I refers to. So, and what is to attend to that I? Only I. It's not one thing attending to some other thing. That's why it's called self-attention or self-investigation. We ourselves are attending to ourselves. We're not attending to anything other than ourselves. So, firstly, in order to investigate ourselves, we first need to understand what we are and what we are not. This body and mind, all these five sheaths, are not what we actually are. These are all objects of phenomena, things known by us. We are not to attend to anything, any object of awareness, but to that which is aware of all those objects, namely ourself. So self-attention means we ourselves attending to ourselves. There are no two things there. We're not looking at a mental voice or a voice of I or to the word I. We are simply attending to ourselves. And then he asks, is this voice the I that needs to be watched? It's not very clear to me what is meant here by voice. I refers to not to a voice, but to the awareness of our own being. It's that awareness of our own being, Satchit. That is what we need to attend to. He says, is this voice the I that needs to be watched, and the watcher being the self-attention? What is to be watched is the watcher itself. The watcher means that which is aware. We are to be aware of what is aware. In other words, we are to turn our attention away from all objects of awareness back towards ourself, the subject, the awareness that knows all those objects. And then he says, is it the body feeling of I that I need to focus on? We shouldn't be attentive. The body is an object. That is not what we should attend to. We should attend to ourselves, that which is aware of the body and all other objects. So it is not attending to any phenomenon, but only attending. It's not attending to any object. It's attending only to the subject, to the awareness that knows all objects. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
So the first question is, after eliminating ego, could we have an inclination to manifest ego once again as a means of enjoyment, say to play within the dream, or within dreams, the waking life, dreams and sleep, past lives, etc.? Or does the elimination of ego completely get rid of the possibility of it rising again?
Firstly, the question, after eliminating ego, could we have an inclination? Who is the we who could have an inclination? That is, ego, inclination means vasanas. Vasanas are all ego's inclinations. So without ego, there can be no inclinations. That is, when ego is eliminated, what remains is Satchit, pure being awareness. Pure being awareness is immutable. It never undergoes any change of any kind whatsoever. So it has no inclinations. It doesn't manifest itself in any way. It just is as it is. It doesn't need to manifest itself because it is Swayam Prakasa. Swayam Prakash means it's self-shining. It knows itself just by being itself. So it doesn't need to manifest. All manifestation appears only in the view of ego. Only when we rise as ego are we aware of all this manifestation, all this these objects, these phenomena, these forms. Um, uh, so, and eliminating ego, because now we experience ourselves as ego, we talk of elimination of ego, but actually what is described as elimination of ego is the recognition that no such thing as ego has ever existed at all. Just like, so long as we mistake the rope to be a snake, we have a problem. Snakes are dangerous, they can bite us and everything, so we feel fear. But if we look at that snake carefully enough, we see, oh, it's only a rope. It was never a snake. Likewise, if we investigate ourselves and see what we actually are, we will see that we have never been, there has never been any such thing as ego. That is, ego is what we mistake ourselves to be when we do not attend to ourselves keenly enough. When we attend to ourselves keenly enough, we will see that we have always been nothing other than pure being awareness, pure Satchit. So there's no possibility of ego rising again, because there can be no again, because it never rose in the first place. That is, now we talk of ego rising because we seem to be ego. But if we, as Bhagavan made clear, if we investigate this ego keenly enough, we will find that no ego has ever risen. And because no ego has ever risen, nothing has ever risen. What is alone is as it is eternally, without undergoing any change whatsoever. So it's only from the perspective of ego that we can ask such a question. But when ego is eliminated, that any possibility of rising is eliminated forever, eternally. There never was any rising in the first place. It will become clear to us. Why is it not clear to us now? Because because as ego, we are looking away from ourselves. If we look back at ourselves, try to see what we actually are, we will see that we are eternal, immutable, pure awareness, and that there's never been any such thing as any rising at all. Since ego hasn't risen, nothing else has risen, because all other things that rise only in the view of ego. So when ego is eliminated, all inclinations are eliminated, all phenomena are eliminated, all risings of all kinds are eliminated eternally. In fact, it will be clear that they never occurred in the first place. So I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
Yes, I was just, I think that perhaps part of the reason that question might have been asked is because of this emphasis on Leela in so much of Indian philosophy, including Advaita Vedanta, the thing of Krishna Leela, the play of Krishna and all that, the
Yeah,
world, that sort of thing. And I wonder if you'd if you could just refer to that at all.
yes, Leela, Leela is how, that is, within Vedanta, many different levels, many different types of explanations are given, because the the most advanced explanations will not suit us when we are not at such an advanced stage. So what we are taught at PhD level is not appropriate to teach in primary school, because in primary school you have to teach according to the level of the student. So in primary school, the children are just beginning to learn to read and write. So you teach what is appropriate for their age group. When they learn the basics in primary school, they then go on to secondary school and they learn more advanced things. And if they pursue their education, they then go on to university and do a bachelor's degree. And then if they want to continue, they then do a master's degree. And then they may do a PhD, and then they do postdoctoral research. All these are different levels in the same way in spirituality. Different types of teachings are given to suit people at different stages of spiritual development. So the idea that all this is a play of God, that's an appropriate explanation at a certain stage that suits people. That's an explanation that will be agreeable to people at a certain stage of spiritual development. It's a useful explanation, but it's not the ultimate explanation. The ultimate explanation is all this is just a play of ego. When we rise as ego, we project all this. And the ultimate explanation is that we've never risen as ego. The ultimate explanation is ajata, but nothing has ever, there's no such thing as rising at all. In the famous Sanskrit verse, which is generally attributed to Gaudapada because it's a part of the Mandukya Karika, but actually it occurs in a couple of Upanishads. So it's probably, Gaudapada was actually probably quoting it from these Upanishads. That is, it begins, na nirodho, there's no cessation. Why? Na chotpati, because there's also no arising. Since nothing has ever risen, nothing is ever destroyed. So this is the ultimate truth. So to talk of everything being a leela of God, yes, that's an appropriate explanation at a certain stage, but it's not the ultimate explanation. So is that an adequate answer to that question, Shalini?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Self-inquiry should be done when thought arises, or should it also be done when thought does not arise?
Okay. To answer this, we need to understand what is thought. Many people, without a deep understanding, they equate the term thought with the mental chatter that tends to go on in the mind throughout most of the waking and dream state. But when Bhagavan talks about thought, he uses the term thought in a much broader sense. Bhagavan uses the term thought to refer to mental phenomena of any kind whatsoever. So all mental impressions are thoughts, all perceptions, all memories, all thoughts, feelings, likes, dislikes, desires, all are thoughts. Not only are all these things thoughts, the I that is aware of all these things is itself a thought. That is, ego is itself a thought. So when no thoughts arise, that is a state of manolaya, a state like sleep. In sleep, we cannot do self-inquiry because there's no one there to do the self-inquiry. Self-inquiry or self-investigation is only for ego. That is, what needs to investigate itself and know itself as it actually is only ego. So ego is the first thought. So it's only when thoughts have risen that self-investigation is possible. When thoughts haven't risen, then we're in a state like sleep and there's no one there to do any self-investigation. So throughout none of us are achieving this, but our aim should be throughout the waking and dream states, we should be trying to attend to ourselves. That is self-investigation. Bhagavan defines self-investigation, Atma-vichara, in the 16th paragraph of Nana, saying, Sadakalamum Atma Sadakalamum Manate Atma Vilvetirpatikutan Atma-vichara Mendrupaya. That literally means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. He said he begins that sentence with the word sadakalamum. That means always. It's a very strong way of saying always. Sada itself means always. Sadakalamum means it's a very emphatic way of saying always. So the aim in self-investigation should be to always attend to ourselves. Obviously, only in a state of mind can the mind be fixed on itself. So that it applies only to waking and dream. In sleep, mind is absent. In other states of manolaya, mind is absent. So self-investigation is neither necessary nor possible in such states. Self-investigation is necessary only in waking and dream. So throughout waking and dream, our aim should be to attend to ourselves. When he said keeping the mind on oneself, that means keeping the attention on ourselves. So we need to try to keep our attention fixed on ourselves throughout the waking and dream states. And throughout the waking and dream states, we have risen as ego, the first thought I, and all other thoughts have rise along with us. So we need not worry about thoughts. In the 6th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, however many thoughts arise, so what? As and when each thought arises, we should vigilantly investigate to whom it is risen. Investigating to whom it has risen means turning our attention away from the thought, away from whatever appears, back towards ourselves, the one to whom it has appeared. So, so long as we are concerned about the appearance or the disappearance of thoughts, the arising or the non-arising of thoughts, our attention is on something other than ourselves. We should forget about thoughts and attend only to ourselves. That alone is self-investigation. The only thought we should attend to is this first thought I. In other words, we should attend only to ego, not to any other thought. So I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
And the second question is, I remain peaceful and then suddenly a thought arises in me that I should do self-inquiry and my peace goes away. At this point, should I ask who wants to do self-inquiry?
If we are, that is when this question is asked, I remain peaceful. This is not the real peace. This peace is a state of mind. States of mind come and go. So sometimes the mind is in a more calm state, sometimes it's in a more agitated state. But whatever be the state of mind, whether the mind is peaceful or agitated, our aim should be to try to attend to ourselves. If our peace is disturbed by the thought that I should do self-inquiry, what has disturbed our peace is not the self-inquiry, but only the thought I should do self-inquiry. We shouldn't even give room for the thought I should do self-inquiry. We should do self-inquiry. In other words, we should attend to the I that feels I should do self-inquiry. Self-inquiry simply means keeping our attention fixed on ourselves. If we keep our attention fixed on ourselves, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, the mind thereby subsides, and to the extent to which the mind subsides, to that extent the peace alone remain. So self-inquiry will not disturb the peace. Self-inquiry will dissolve all disturbance to peace. That is what peace is our real nature. What disturbs this peace is our rising as ego. when we've risen as ego, then we experience varying states of mind. And we say, relatively speaking, this state of mind is peaceful, this state of mind is agitated. But these differences are only for ego, which is itself the original disturbance of the peace, the original peace that is our own nature. So all we should attend to is to attend to attend to ourself, attend to nothing else. So let peace come and go, let agitation come and go. We are not concerned with the states of mind. We are concerned only with who am I who experience these states of mind. So if the question is, at this point, should I ask who wants to do self-inquiry? Self-inquiry is not about asking. That is an inquiry, or a more appropriate interpretation, a translation of Atma-vichara is self-investigation rather than self-inquiry, because inquiry can mean investigation, but it can also mean asking questions. Asking questions is not what Bhagavan means by self-investigation. Of course, any investigation begins with a question. Yeah, that is, you're investigating in order to answer a question. So we begin with the question, who am I? But merely asking the question, who am I, is not going to enable us to know what we actually are. We need to investigate ourselves. If a scientist wants to investigate a certain phenomenon, he doesn't just sit there saying, what is this phenomenon? How does it behave? In order to investigate it, he or she has to observe it. They have to test it, put it. So the basic tool of any investigation is observation, attention. So all we are to do in order to investigate who am I, all we need to do is to fix our attention on ourselves. That's why Bhagavan says, he defines self-investigation as always keeping the mind on oneself. That's all we need to do. If we keep our mind on ourselves, that cannot disturb our peace. That by keeping our mind on ourselves, we are, to the extent to which we keep our mind on ourselves, we as ego thereby subside. And ego itself is what disturbs all peace. So if we want to experience eternal peace, which is our own real nature, we need do nothing more than just attend to ourselves, attend to our own being. Attend to the I that rises thinking I must do self-inquiry. My peace is disturbed. Who is this I who says all this? That's what we need to investigate.
And the next question is, I'm trying to sort of see, I think there's a bit of a grammatical thing. I think the saying is that I've been left with only one desire, with one doubt that my mind tries and makes an effort to see the source, the consciousness, the nature of thought, their source, and does not see anything inside. But my mind thinks and makes some more effort, puts some more force to go inside, and this disturbs my peace and creates some strain. My question is it not another trick of my mind to sustain and strengthen itself by this desire, this doing, this effort, this thought? Should I not abandon this desire for self-inquiry too, and just remain peaceful, just empty without doing anything? Should I not ask myself, who is it who wants to do self-inquiry, who wants to see consciousness, who wants to ask, who am I?
This is very similar to the previous question. As I say, it's not a matter of asking ourselves, it's just a matter of attending to ourselves. If we attend to ourselves, if we are really attending to ourselves, we will not come back saying it, but we do not see anything inside. Because obviously what is inside is only ourselves. And if we're attending to ourselves, we won't say I don't see anything, because we ourselves are there. So all this shows a lack of clear understanding of what the practice is, all we need to attend to is to attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more we as ego subside and our real nature reveals itself. So, so long as we see a snake, we have to look at it carefully. If we look at it carefully enough, eventually, I mean, if we look, so long as we're not looking at it carefully, it seems to be a snake. If we look at it carefully enough, we will see it as just a rope. We won't see it's nothing. We'll see there's no such thing as a snake, but what is there is a rope. Likewise, if we look at what now seems to be ego, we will never see nothing. We either see, that's when we don't look at ourselves keenly enough, we seem to be ego. When we look at ourselves keenly enough, we will see that what we actually are is pure awareness. So to say I don't see anything inside, that shows that we are looking for something, some object, some phenomena, but that's not self-investigation. We are just our aim in self-investigation is just to attend to our own being in order to see what we actually are. So if we don't have a clear understanding of what this practice is, we may end up in all sorts of confusion like this. But it's very, very simple what Bhagavan has asked us to do, just to attend to ourselves. And we can never say, but we ourselves are nothing. If we talk about, I looked inside and I saw only a void, then we weren't really looking inside, because the eye that saw the void is what we should be looking at. So we are just looking at ourselves. And we can never say ourself is nothing, because ourself is, that is what we are attending to is the one who is attending. What we are trying to be aware of is the one who is aware. So there's the idea that we're seeing a void or that we're not seeing anything, it shows that we haven't really understood what the practice is. So it's if we want to go deep in this practice that Bhagavan has taught us, we need to understand the basic principles of his teachings. That is, what we actually are is just mere satchit, mere being awareness. That is what we always experience as I am. That's all we need to know. That's all we need to attend to. So if that is when another word that's used here is desire. We talk of desire when we want something that we don't have. But this self-investigation is not driven by desire, because we are already what we are seeking. We are just, we have a love to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So this self-investigation is not driven by desire, but by love. By the love just to be as we actually are. And to be as we actually are, we need to cease rising as ego. So all desires are only for ego. Desires take us outwards, away from ourselves, whereas love takes us back to ourselves. Because love is our own real nature. Desire is merely a distorted form of love. When love is distorted and directed to something other than ourselves. If we take liberation, for example, to be something other than ourselves, we can say we desire liberation. But liberation is not something other than ourselves. Liberation, we are eternally liberated. Liberation is what we actually are. So a lot of these questions are asked due to lack of clear understanding. And if we lack clear understanding, we won't be able to practice this properly. That is, this is the path of jnana, the path of knowledge. So without a clear understanding, we cannot, we won't be able to go very far in this path of self-investigation, because we'll be looking for something, and we'll look inside and say, I don't see anything, because we haven't understood. What we are looking for is not something new, not something. We are just looking to understand what we ourselves actually are. Not even to understand, we're looking to see what we ourselves actually are. We're looking to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So we are always aware of ourselves. We are always aware I am. But now this I am, this awareness I am, is mixed and conflated with adjuncts as I am such and such a person. I am this body. In order to remove this false superimposition of adjuncts, all we need to do is to attend to our own being, to the fundamental awareness I am. That is Satchit. That's what we attend to. By attending to that, we subside and we dissolve in that. It's as simple as that. So I hope that answers that question adequately.
Yeah, and then the last question from the emails before we move to the ones being asked today is, how can we distinguish the I thought from the I amness without adjuncts in a practical approach from Sri Michael's own experience?
There is only one I, so we need not distinguish it. So long as we're looking outwards, this one I is mixed with adjuncts, and we are aware of ourselves as I am Michael, I am whoever, I am this person, I am this body. In order to separate the I am from these adjuncts, all we need to do is to turn our attention back within to the fundamental awareness I am. To the extent to which we attend to that fundamental awareness I am, the adjuncts will drop off and the pure I am alone will remain. So all we need to do is to attend to what we are now aware of as I. If we attend only to I, by attending only to I, we thereby separate ourselves from the adjuncts and remain as the pure I am. Because these adjuncts are not holding on to us. We are holding on to the adjuncts. That is, we rise as ego, we grasp this body and we say, I am this person. I have such and such a nationality, such and such a religion, such and such political views, such and such, this is my family, this is my parents, my children, my wife, my husband, all these are rooted in this false identification, I am this body. And this false identification is nourished and perpetuated by our attending to things other than ourselves. If instead of attending to anything other than ourselves, if we turn our attention back towards ourselves, towards the one I that we actually are, the adjuncts will drop off, everything else will drop off along with them, and the pure I alone will remain. We will remain as that pure I, which is what we always actually are. This question is a bit like saying how to distinguish the snake from the rope. Well, we can't really distinguish the snake from the rope because they're not two things there, a snake and a rope. All we need to do is look at the snake very carefully and we will see that it was always just a rope. Likewise, doesn't matter if what we now experience as I is seemingly mixed and conflated with adjuncts. We shouldn't attend to the adjunct. All we should attend to is the I. If we attend to the I, the adjuncts will drop off and the pure I alone will remain. I hope that's a clear answer to that question.
Yes, I'll move on to quite a long question. And I think I'll read out the whole question. It's in parts, but they're both the same thing. In Arthur Osborne's Ramana Maharshi, Path of Self-Knowledge, in that book, it says that after awakening, Maharishi went to Tiruvannamalai, started to go to Tirumalai, to Tiruvannamalai. The last part, in the last part of his way, he walked on foot. He arrived at the temple of Arjani Nallur,
Araini Nalo.
Arjani Nallur,
Yeah.
where the light filled the temple completely, which was not really a material light. The Maharishi also mentions in 40 verses on reality in 7, 12, 14, 17, 18, and 22. These are the verses that he says, the self shines with nothing else. And it goes on. In the book Talks with Ramana Maharshi in 95, I guess that's page 95, in a conversation or point 95. In the conversation, Major Chadwick cites Edward Carpenter's experience, which faded. Then Chadwick himself mentioned that many people in the West had this kind of a cosmic flash. These are all expressions related to light and shine. Now, the question is, what does it mean that the self shines? Second question, dear Michael, have you experienced this kind of shine and brightness? Okay, okay. So the first is, what does it mean that the self shines? The second is, Michael, have you experienced this kind of shine and brightness? The third is, what can be said about many people, about the fact that many people experience such a light coming from above and filling everything? And although there were hints of it in Maharishi's words, what was Maharishi's experience? For example, he tells Osborne that the thoughts appeared and disappeared like the different notes of a piece of music, but I remains as Shruti, the basic sound, which is the base of all other sounds and resonates with them. But this book also mentions Sahaj Samadhi without the light. So what was Maharishi's Samadhi like?
It was not like anything. If it was like something, it wouldn't be Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi is our real nature. It is a state of pure being awareness. That is not like anything. Regarding shining, that is, awareness is often metaphorically referred to as a light and as shining. The reason for this is light is the is is the is the is the means by which we know things. Well, we know things. We know the means by which we see things. Without light, we see nothing. So light is what illumines all the objects in the world. So in the daytime, we have the sunlight. The sunlight illumines all the objects in the world, so we see all the objects in the world by means of that sunlight. At night time, we have artificial lights. Nowadays, we have electric lights. In old days, they had candles or oil lamps or some other or kerosene lamps or whatever, some means, or by the moonlight, which is a reflected light of the sun. So light is the medium that enables us to see things. Because of that, it is a very appropriate analogy for awareness. That is, awareness is the light that enables us to know everything. If we come back to start with the physical light, to see physical objects, we need physical light. To see mental objects, we need mental light. That is the awareness. The ego is the awareness but knows knows the physical objects and the mental objects. So all objects are known by the means of the mind light. But from where does the mind light, from where does the mind derive its light? It derives its light, the light of awareness, that is, from the original light of awareness, which is the pure awareness I am. So the pure awareness I am is ever shining. There is no sentient being who is not aware of that shining. Shining, as I say here, it's used metaphorically. It's not like seeing a light out there. That is, we are all clearly aware, I am. That awareness I am is therefore said to be Swayam Prakasha, self-shining, that it shines by its own light. We don't need any other light. We don't need any physical light or any sort of light to know I am. In a completely dark room, we won't be able to see anything else. So if someone asks, is there a table in the room? I can't see it. We don't know. Is there this or that? We can't see anything. Then if they ask, are you there? Yes, I am there. So by what light do we know our existence in that dark room? We know our existence just by the light of awareness. That is because this light of awareness is ever shining. So that is what Bhagavan means by shining. In the case of that light that he saw in Narayani Nalo, that is, these are, when he said that is, these are sort of mystical experiences, we can say. This is not really, this has nothing to do with Sahaja Samadhi, but just Bhagavan sometimes had such experiences. But the Bhagavan who had such experiences is the Bhagavan we see as a person. So as a person, Bhagavan seemed to undergo certain experiences. But when Bhagavan revealed the deeper truth of his experience, he made it clear that he is aware of nothing other than I am. Because whatever we see as all these multiple phenomena, as light and darkness and all these other pairs of opposites and all phenomena, is what he sees as I am. Because he sees it all as it is, as a pure awareness I am. We see the pure awareness I am as all this phenomena. So we cannot say Sahaja Samadhi is like anything. All we can say is Sahaja Samadhi is our real state. And in order to know that, we have to be that. And in order to be that, we need to cease rising as ego. And in order to cease rising as ego, all we need to do is to attend to ourselves. Attending to ourselves means attending to that light of awareness that is ever shining in our heart as our own being, I am. So I hope that adequately answered that question. Because it was quite a long question. There were some bits of it I may have missed, but I think that was the essential thing about what is this, what is meant by light and shining in this context. It's not any sort of physical light or even a mental light. It is the original light of pure awareness.
Yes, I think it also referred to these experiences which are mentioned by Arthur Osborne, that when Bhagwan arrived at the temple, then the light completely filled the temple, and it was not really a material light. Is that something you'd like to comment on, Michael?
It's that is in Bhagavan's path. We shouldn't be interested in phenomena. We may have all sorts of experiences. We may have visions of God. We may see divine lights, hear divine sounds, all these things. As Bhagavan says in Uludu Napadu, seeing God without seeing oneself is seeing only a mental vision. So all these are mental. Whatever, any phenomenon of any kind whatsoever is mental. The light we are trying to see is not a phenomenal light. It's not a light that is a phenomena. It is the light of awareness that illumines the mind, enabling the mind to know all other things. But instead of by using this light of awareness to know anything other than ourselves, we are misusing that light. We should turn that light of awareness back on itself. In other words, the mind should turn its attention back within, back towards itself, back towards the original light of pure awareness that is ever shining in our heart as I am. So, Bhagavan may sometimes have talked about certain experiences that he had, but these are not important. What is important is what his essential teaching. He didn't ask us to have visions, to see lights or anything. He asked us to see ourselves as we actually are. The only light we should try to see is the light of pure awareness, the light that is our own, but the light of pure awareness that is what we actually are, that is our own being. That's the only thing that should concern us.
And I think the same thing would apply, Michael, to the other mentions of various kinds of light phenomenon that people have experienced in the West as a
Yeah.
cosmic flash and so on.
Anything that appears and disappears is not the original light. It may be some sort of mystical experience or something, but the original light is ever shining. It never appears or disappears.
And there was one last
Does
part.
the awareness I am ever appear or disappear? If we say yes, it appears or disappears, to whom does it appear or disappear? So that is the one thing that we are never not aware of is I am. Other things appear and disappear. Everything appears and disappears. Even ego, the knower of all other things, appears and disappears. It appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. But the one thing that is ever shining is this fundamental awareness I am. That alone is what is real. That alone is what we need to know as it is. And we can know it as it is only by attending to it ever more keenly.
There's just one other part which refers to music rather than to light.
Oh, yes. Again, Bhagavan, when Bhagavan explained his experience, he had to explain it in terms that people could understand. So people, because we mistake ourselves to be a body, Bhagavan seems to be like us. He seems to be a person like us. He seems to be a body and a mind. So, and it seems to us that Bhagavan is seeing all the things that we are seeing. If we were there during Bhagavan's bodily lifetime, we would see Bhagavan behaving in the world as if he's seeing all the things we are seeing. But what he says is, so coming down to our level, he says, yes, he sees all these things, but he sees the underlying Shruti, the underlying, that is in Indian music, there is what is called Shruti. Shruti is the bass note. Often there's a there's a thing called a Shruti box where you can, if you just if you press that Shruti box, it'll be letting out one steady note. That is the background note. So Bhagavan uses the analogy of that Shruti note. All the other things, they appear and disappear, but the Shruti remains constant. So in that analogy, the Shruti is the awareness I am. That alone is what matters. So Bhagavan was Bhagavan ever aware of anything other than that Shruti, I am? No, he made it clear he wasn't actually aware of anything other than I am, because I am alone is what is real. But because we see him seemingly knowing all these things, he says, yes, the base note, the fundamental awareness I am is this base note, this Shruti. Everything else is just incidental. It comes and it goes. But the truth is, does that mean Bhagavan doesn't know any of this? Yes and no. That is, Bhagavan knows exactly what we know. But he knows it as it is. We know it as it seems to be. So what Bhagavan is aware of is just Satchit, the pure being awareness I am. That's the only thing that actually exists. That's the only thing that actually shines. But we see that as all this multiplicity. So we can't say Bhagavan doesn't see all of this because he sees the reality of all this. But we see all this and fail to see the reality of it. If we see the reality of it, the reality of it is one and indivisible. So Does Bhagavan see multiplicity? No, he doesn't see it as multiplicity, he sees it as one. What we see, what actually exists is only one, the pure awareness I am. We see that one as all this multiplicity. Bhagavan sees all this multiplicity as that one. So, as he says in Uludunapti, I think in verse 31 or so, how to understand the state of he's referring to Vijnani, how to understand the state of Vijnani who knows nothing other than self. That is, Vijnani, we can't say Vijnani he or she because Vijnani is beyond all gender distinction. Gender distinction is only for the body. So let's refer to Vijnani as it. Vijnani sees only itself, nothing other than itself. Because the jnani is only pure jnana, pure awareness. And pure awareness knows nothing other than pure awareness. So rather than trying to break our heads, trying to understand Bhagavan's state, let's investigate ourselves, see what we actually are, and then we will, because what we actually are is what Bhagavan actually is. So to know what Bhagavan is experienced, we need to know what we actually are. So all we need to do is to investigate, who am I? And everything will become clear. Until we clearly know the nature of I, nothing is, whatever else we know will be clouded. So all we need to do, all Bhagavan has asked us to do, not to puzzle about his state, but to try and find out our state. What is our real state? Who am I?
The next question I got, should we move on to that?
Yes.
The next question is, when we have the firm conviction, knowingness, that we are pure consciousness, even if it is not our direct experience, in other words, we still perceive a subject-object reality, what does it practically mean to be pure consciousness in daily life, especially during life's toughest challenges, such as severe illness, facing death, financial problems, the loss of loved ones, or personal crises? Thank you.
In pure awareness, there is no daily life where none of any of these problems. All these problems appear only for ego. So long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a body, and therefore we experience financial difficulties, relationship difficulties. We have loved ones, and our loved ones pass away sooner or later, or we pass away sooner or later. So it's all these things are all problems only for us as ego. So in order to be pure awareness, we need to cease rising as ego. And in order to cease rising as ego, we need to attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more we as ego will subside. Until ego is dissolved completely, we will continue to experience ourselves as I am this person, I have all these difficulties, I have relationship difficulties, I have financial difficulties, I have health difficulties, I have all these things. I mean, this is the nature of embodied existence. We all have faced problems and difficulties of various sorts. But to the extent to which we as ego subside, we will be unaffected by these things. We will just recognize, yeah, difficulties, this is the nature of life. This is the nature of embodied existence. So long as we continue rising as ego and experiencing ourselves as a body, we will continue experiencing problems of various sorts. So whatever great problems we're facing now, all these are going to come to an end of this. Whole life is a dream. When this body dies, that's the end of a dream. The body dies in the view of in our view, the dream comes to an end. So let's not worry about all these problems and things. Yes, okay, so long as we're in this dream, we have to, when we feel hungry, we eat. When we have financial difficulties, we try and find some way of clearing our debts or paying our bills or whatever it is. So these are all things that within the dream, there are all these problems. But let's not give too much reality to these things. Knowing that um, life has its ups and its downs, the joys and sorrows of life. This is the nature of embodied existence. But we should be indifferent to these things, knowing that these are all just fleeting phenomena. What is real is only I am. So more and more we should be trying to hold on to I am. To the extent to which we hold on to I am, we as ego will subside and therefore will be unconcerned about all these problems. I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. The next question is, it sometimes seems as though Maya is a ripening stage, which deserves reverence, and at other times it seems there is a disgust for it. Which of these two points of view, or both, are closer to the truth?
Maya is nothing but our own mind. It's, so long as we allow our attention to go outwards, we experience Maya and its effects. The correct attitude towards Maya is to turn our back on it. In other words, turn our attention back towards ourselves. Maya is the outward going mind. The inward going mind is grace. Grace and Maya are the same power, but we are misusing that power by allowing our attention to go outwards. We are using it correctly by uh, turning it to face back within. So let's not worry about Maya. Let's hold on to grace, which is the inward turned mind. Well, or rather, grace is what we, to the extent to which our mind is turned inwards, we are facing towards grace. And that is the true form of that divine power. That can be seen only to the extent to which we look deep within. So long as we're looking outwards, we're caught up in Maya. So which do we want? Do we want grace or Maya? Maya has been giving us endless problems. So let's leave Maya aside. Let's hold on to grace. That's ever, as Bhagavan said, grace is ever shining in our heart as our own being, I am. Let's hold on to that. And then we need not worry about Maya.
The next question is, could Michael elaborate how unconditional love for others arises as we go more and more inside and attend to ourselves? Will we find that when we love others unconditionally, we are finally going inside?
So long as the mind is going outwards, we see others and we see ourselves as I am this person. So long as we, to the extent to which we allow the mind to go outwards, the difference between self and others seems very real. To the extent to which we turn the mind back within, we as ego subside, and thereby the difference between self and others dissolves. So we are all in the process of following this practice of self-investigation. So we haven't yet reached the goal, but we are in this process. To the extent to which we follow this practice of going within, we as ego will be subsiding. And to the extent we as ego subside, the distinction between self and others will also dissolve. So we will naturally feel love and concern for others. But love and concern for others is not our aim, because others appear only when we allow our mind to go outwards. The reality of all those others is our own being. So if we turn our attention back within, we and the others will all dissolve into that, and that alone will remain. that being the pure awareness that we actually are.
The next question is, would the question, namely, what is the nature of I, or what is I, be a more accurate way of describing self-inquiry instead of who am I, as the word who, to me, automatically points to a person and one's characteristics?
Perhaps, but let's not get caught up in the words. We need to understand what the words are referring to. Now we experience ourselves as a person, but we want to know what we actually are. So who am I is a natural way of expressing it. But whether you say who am I or what am I, it really makes no difference. And it's not the question that matters. I mean, the question is the pointer. But what we are not simply to dwell on the question, who am I? We are to try to investigate who am I, or what am I, or what is the real nature of I, however we wish to express it. In order to know I as it actually is, or in order to know I as I actually am, I need to attend to myself. That's all. So let's not worry about the wording of the questions. For our manana, for our thinking about these things, we can think about how most appropriate to word it. That's according to our own tastes and inclinations. But what is important, that is, the manana is necessary for clarity of understanding. But manana by itself is insufficient. The manana is useful only to the extent to which we actually put it into practice by turning our attention back towards I. So Bhagavan has expressed it in various different ways. He expressed this: who am I? What am I? What is the source from which I've risen? What is the nature of myself? All are pointing in the same direction. They're all pointing our attention back towards ourselves, towards I. That's all that matters.
Michael, this is the first time that we don't have any more questions.
Oh,
so
right.
If anybody would like to ask a question.
The first question included, and then what remains is silence. So that is where we have to return. All these questions are useful only to the extent to which they take us back to silence, which can be found only in our own heart as our own being.
Yes, in self-investigation, when we were talking about the five bodies, which is, the five sheets, the layers of the mind, or the mind body, which comprise the ego. When we turn to the subject, the ego, and investigate that as a means, of going to the self, we're investigating the real. We're investigating the ego as awareness, as subjective awareness, as the subject. I think, am I correct? That's what you said. Yes. So we're just investigating our own subjectivity, our own awareness, and going into it more and more deeply. And in that, we're looking at our own mind in that sense, where we're turning in and investigating our mind. Yes.
But ego is not any of the five sheaves. Ego is that which is aware of itself as I am these five sheaves.
There's
the five sheaves are all phenomena known by us. But we wrongly identify ourselves as these five sheaves. So what we are to investigate is not any of these five sheaves, but only that fundamental awareness I, which now seems to be mixed and conflated with these adjuncts.
There was something which I found quite helpful. It's something which you've also said, and which sort of a very well-known Buddhist teacher just mentioned. It's something very simple. And he simply said that it is that all of this meditation and all the rest of it is simply observing one's own mind, by which he meant one's own consciousness, one's own subjectivity, and so on. And you may not like what you see, some of it, of course. Says that it is by coming to note, sort of by coming to observe our own mind, that we develop a self-respect, and only then can we respect others. And I think another way of saying it is that only then do we really care about ourselves and come to care for others, have compassion to ourselves, or love for ourselves and love for others. And very often this question comes up, which had come up about love and self-investigation, that somehow we're cutting ourselves off from everything else by simply observing our own mind, observing who we really are. And I thought that was a bit clarifying, that it's only by really investigating ourselves, by really simply observing, going more and more deeply into it, that we really come to have that self-love, that self-respect. And through that, we come to see others and understand others, so to speak, in the world as they truly are, and simply love them as consciousness, or whatever it might be in the end. But yes, something like that. Yes.
By investigating ourselves, we're not cutting ourselves off from anything. We are holding on to that which is the real substance of all these appearances. And one more thing about observing the mind, we need to understand what is the nature of the mind. There are two aspects of the mind. There's the subject and the objects. All the thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories, likes, dislikes, these are all objects. These are all things known by us. So some people take observing the mind means observing all these phenomena, but that is not, that's observing the outward aspects of mind, the inner aspect of the mind. The mind is also that which knows all these things. So we can divide mind into subject and object. This is what Bhagavan essentially is doing in verse 18 of Upadesha. He begins by saying, Enangale manam, thoughts alone of a mind. Yavinam nanenam enname mulamam. Of all, the thought I is the root. That is, all these many thoughts, the root of all these thoughts is I. Because all other thoughts are objects known by us. Whereas I is the subject who knows all these other thoughts. So what the mind essentially is only this thought I. In other words, ego. That's basically what he's saying in verse 18. So when Bhagavan talks about investigating the mind, he doesn't mean investigating. In verse 17, the previous verse of Upadesha, he says, when one investigates the form of the mind without forgetting, there's no such thing as mind at all. This is the direct path for all. What he means by investigating the form of mind, he means investigating what the mind essentially is. In other words, this thought I. If we investigate this thought I consists of the fundamental awareness I am and the adjuncts with which that is seemingly mixed. But when we investigate it, the adjuncts drop off and the pure I alone remains. So what we are to investigate is not any object or phenomenon, not any thought or feeling or anything that is anything that appears and disappears cannot be what we actually are. So what never appears or disappears is this fundamental awareness I am. That is the essence of ego, which is the essence of the mind. So in that sense, we're investigating the mind. But otherwise, it's very easy when we talk about observing the mind. People generally take observing the mind means observing the thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything, what is called the stream of consciousness. That stream of consciousness is not a stream of consciousness, it's a stream of phenomena which are passing through consciousness. So what we are to observe is only the that which is aware of that stream of consciousness, that stream of phenomena. Then only by, because that is that fundamental awareness I am, which is the essence of ego, that is the underlying reality of everything. That's why I said we're not, by investigating that, we're not actually cutting ourselves off from anything. We are embracing the reality of everything. We may be separating ourselves from the appearance of everything, but holding on to the reality of everything. By holding on to the reality of everything, we separate ourselves from the appearance of everything. So Bhagavan's path is a very deep and subtle path, but at the same time very, very simple. All we have to do is to attend to I.
Michael, I think now there are 5 or 6 questions. So
Right. So the silence has gone. So long as ego rises, we squeeze out the silence, but the silence ever remains as the underlying reality of ego.
So the first question is how to stabilize in Sahaj Samadhi and not just be in temporary Samadhi and then return to ignorance.
What is called Sahaja Samadhi is our own natural state, the state of pure being awareness. We can stabilize in that only by attending to that, attending to our own being, attending to this fundamental awareness I am. To the extent to which we attend to this, we as ego subside and dissolve into that. That state in which ego is dissolved completely, that is the state of stability. That is the state of sthita prajna, the fixed awareness. That is our natural state. We are ever that. Even now we are that. We are never left that. It's only, ego is only a seeming. And this ego seems to exist. We seem to be ego only so long as we're looking at other things. We're attending to anything other than ourselves. So all we need to do is to change the direction of our mind. Now our mind is going out towards the world. We turn it back towards ourselves and keep it fixed in ourselves. So whatever question we ask, any how question, the answer is by attending to ourselves.
The next question is, Ramana Maharshi said that God, the Guru, and Self are one. I consider Ramana Maharshi to be my Guru, and I can see that all is one. I have a lot of Christian friends who talk of Jesus as their God or higher power. And I feel that it is all one, and Jesus is not excluded from my awareness of God. But I don't know how to explain it to people or even to myself sometimes. I want to understand who my higher power is because I need a higher power to live my life as I've struggled with many addictive patterns and mental health issues. My sense is that I don't need to define it. I would love it if you could help me clarify this a little bit. I sometimes wonder if I should go to church or to Indian temples, etc. I want to turn inwards to God in any way I can, but I can also go off in different directions and get confused about it. So I really would love your take on this.
Okay. As far as explaining to others, we are not here to explain anything to anyone. If someone asks us anything, we can then share what we understand, but we are not here to to explain things. Different people are attracted to different types of religious beliefs. According to the purity of the mind, different types of religious beliefs will appeal to different people. So we've all been through many different stages of because we are undergoing a process of spiritual growth, so to speak. So at different stages in this spiritual growth, different types of beliefs will appeal to us. So this Advaitic teaching is not for everyone. Advaita, that is, if we see in Vedanta, we will find most of the other schools of Vedanta, they love to attack Advaita, criticize Advaita. Whereas Advaita has no issues with any other school of Vedanta, because from a perspective of Advaita, if really properly understood, all these other different schools are appropriate to people at different levels of spiritual development. So we are not here to try and convince others. We should only open our mouth and talk about Bhagavan's teachings when people ask us. Otherwise, we should keep quiet, because there's no point in trying to convince people of something that they're not yet ready to understand. So we should leave people to believe whatever they want to believe, because that's what's appropriate for them at their stage of spiritual development. Regarding our own understanding, when Bhagavan says God, Guru, and Self are one, this is a very, very deep truth. That is, self here means us, not ourself as the ego, or ourself as we actually are. There, Atman refers to Atma Swarupa, the real nature of ourself, what we actually are. What we actually are is what appears outwardly, that is, our own reality, the pure awareness I am, the Satchit, has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan as Guru in order to tell us to turn within. And that same, what has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan is what also appears as God, the higher power running this whole universe. So that power is the power of grace. As Bhagavan made clear, grace or God is not something that exists out there. Grace, but Bhagavan often used to say, grace is not something that's going to one day descend from heaven. Grace is what is always shining in your heart as your own being. So that is the higher power. So if we want to surrender ourselves to that higher power and allow that higher power to remove all our difficulties, all our depressions and our mental issues and all sorts of things, the best way to do so is to hold on to our own being, hold on to I am, because I am is the shining of God, the shining of Guru, the shining of grace in our heart. That is our own reality. That alone is what is real. There is no God, no Guru, no grace other than that. But we are not to tell that to everyone, because a lot of people will get very upset if we say like that, because they won't understand it. They won't want to understand it. But if we want to follow Bhagavan's path is all about turning within and holding on to our own being, which is itself the higher power, whose help that we are all seeking. I hope that was an adequate answer to that question.
I think so, Michael. I think what you simply, in terms of Jesus and so on, these are simply different ways or different representations.
Yeah. Jesus, Rama, Krishna, Buddha, these are all different manifestations of Guru.
The next
But
question.
reality is the same. Reality is one. And as far as Jesus is concerned, Jesus said, I and my Father are one. Jesus has, the role of Jesus was as guru. When he says, I and my Father are one, he's saying exactly what Bhagavan says. Kadavulum guruvum unmayal verala. He says in the 12th paragraph of Nana. That means God and Guru are in truth not different. So Jesus and his Father, that is, Guru and God are one. And where do we find that God? The same Jesus tells us, look, see, the kingdom of God is within you. So it's ultimately, it's all pointing in the same direction, but not everyone understands it. Don't tell your Christian friends that, they may get very upset. And because the same words, they will understand in different ways.
Yes, I think one needs to be careful. People have been executed in some Abrahamic traditions for saying that I am God.
Yes.
So on.
And in Christianity, many people were for just believing a slightly different interpretation of the same Christianity. The Inquisition would, or someone would burn you at the stake or torture you or something. But yeah, this is the outward going mind, but we're on the inward going path.
But the next question is losing sight, is losing interest in outward life a sign of progress? All that I like to do is keep awareness on the self. I stopped meeting with friends, lost interest in movies, etc.
Very good. So yeah. So long as we're keeping our attention on ourselves, because if we losing interest in everything outside means not only losing interest in all the external world, but also losing interest in the seemingly internal world of thoughts and feelings and everything. What is truly inward is even this mind is something exterior to ourselves. So turning within means turning our attention back towards I. The only thing that is within is I. Everything else is outside, including the mind and all its thoughts, feelings, likes, dislikes, and so on. These all very vishayangal, as Bhagavan says, external vishayas. That is what we need to leave and to hold on to our own form of light. This is how he says it in verse 16 of Upadesha. Leaving the external phenomena, the mind knowing its own form of light alone is real awareness. Its own form of light means its essential nature, which is the pure awareness I am. So everything else is external. We leave everything else and hold on to that which is truly internal, which is only our own being.
There are a couple more questions. The first one is, Bhagavan was very much devoted to the hill Arunachala as his own self. How can we reconcile the fact that Arunachal is what we see outside as an object, and yet it can be considered as our own self? Could you please clarify this, Michael?
That is, it's perhaps easier to explain this in terms of Bhagavan, and then we can explain it in terms of Arunachala. Bhagavan is our own self, but because we lack any interest in turning within, because our minds are outward going, it's necessary for our own self to appear outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to tell us to turn within. Arunachala is exactly the same. The Arunachala is our own reality appearing outwardly in a form. That form, Bhagavan, that is Arunachala and Bhagavan are one and the same. Arunachala is eternally teaching in silence. But because of our outward going minds, we fail to recognize that teaching in silence. So the same Arunachala appeared in the form of Bhagavan to give us the same what he was eternally teaching in silence, Bhagavan has taught us in words. What Arunachala is eternally teaching in silence, Bhagavan came to teach us in words. In Aksharammalai, there's a verse in which Bhagavan says, Tirumbiya handane dinamahakankan tariyumandraneya Arunachala. That means turning within, see yourself daily or constantly with the inner eye. It will be known. Thus you said, my Arunachala. So did Arunachala say that to Bhagavan in words? Obviously not, because Arunachala is in the form of a mountain. So that is what Arunachala taught Bhagavan in silence. Bhagavan has translated for our dull intellects into words. If our mind was always going inwards, there would be no need for any external form of God or Guru. But because our mind, the natural flow of our mind is outward, that's the very nature of the mind to be going outwards, it is necessary for God or Guru to appear outwardly in name and form. There are many different names and forms of God, but the speciality of Arunachala and Ramana, Ramana is here for destroying ego. So that is the ultimate act of grace is to annihilate ego. If we want to understand more about Bhagavan's the love that Bhagavan had for Arunachala, we cannot understand it fully without losing ourselves in that. But the key to understanding that is Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, the 5 hymns to Arunachala.
Okay.
And by the way, I saw earlier one comment popped up. I couldn't read it fully, but it was someone saying, when is Michael going to return to talking about Bhagavan's works rather than just answering questions? Something to that effect. Yes, that is my intention. I am at present working on revising my translation of Arunachala Navamani Malai. Once I have finished this, I will post it on my blog, and then I will talk about one verse at each meeting. My progress on that is extremely slow because so many other interruptions come along the way. But if that will happen when Bhagavan makes it possible for it to happen, and then I will start talking about that. And yeah, I mean, the main work I try to focus on is making is revising my translations and making them available online. But because of so many other demands on my time, these things happen slowly. So, but it all happens in Bhagavan's own good time. So sooner or later, hopefully, I will be able to return to that. And eventually, once I've posted all my other translations, then I will return to talking about Aksharammalai.
Is the Navamani Mala available as a book of yours?
No, I haven't even put, there's a playlist on the YouTube channel where I talked about each of the verses, but yeah, I want to do that in more, go into it in more depth, which is why I'm now revising my translation of it.
Should we move on to some of the other questions now,
yes.
Michael? So there are a couple of questions still left. The first one is, would reading the writings and stories of other recognized saints, such as Ramakrishna, Kabir, Krishna, Christ, Guru Nanak, etc., be helpful alongside our main practice of self-investigation? And in turn, would this increase our love to turn inwards, or could it cause confusion? If truth is one, can we ever be led astray if learning from any of the great saints?
All are great saints, but the thing is, great saints have according to the circumstances, they've tailored their teachings according to the needs of those who are around them. So just like in Vedanta, there are many different levels of teaching, many different levels of explanation, many different levels of practice. Having come to Bhagavan, we have come to the ultimate. If we have a firm grasp on what Bhagavan has taught us, and if we are fully dedicated to following Bhagavan, then, for example, if we read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, we will find so many things in the Gospel of Ramakrishna that, though it's expressed in a very different way, essentially it's the same as what Bhagavan is teaching us. So we can enjoy such things, but we need to read all such things with discrimination, understanding that even Bhagavan gave. If you read books like Talks and Day by Day, you'll find all sorts of answers Bhagavan gave to different people. Bhagavan, as he said in answer to Yogananda, which this is recorded in Talks, when Yogananda came from America for a visit sometime in the 1930s, he came to Bhagavan. And the question he asked Bhagavan was, what teachings are to be given for the uplift of the masses? And Bhagavan simply answered, teachings cannot be given en masse. Teaching has to be according to the taught. So even Bhagavan gave different teachings appropriate to the individuals who were asking the questions. So, but if we want the heart of Bhagavan's teachings, the real essence of Bhagavan's teaching, we can find them in his own original writings, in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam, Uladu Napatu, Nana, Upadeshundya, Anma Vide, and such works. If we grasp the essence of Bhagavan's teaching, then we can read these other things and we can take what's useful from them. But truly speaking, if we've understood what Bhagavan has taught us in his own original writings, nothing else is necessary. We're not going to get any clarity from any other source, but we cannot get from Bhagavan himself. Because all the essence of all teachings have been given to us by Bhagavan. Even what he hasn't stated explicitly, it's implicit there in his own writings. So we should focus on studying and doing manana, thinking deeply about what Bhagavan has taught us, and most important of all, putting it into practice. All these other things, it's okay as it's quite nice sometimes to read some other things, but that shouldn't be our focus. Our focus should be on Bhagavan, and Bhagavan, following the path Bhagavan has taught us. And we shouldn't be looking elsewhere, thinking we're going to learn something from elsewhere which we can't learn from Bhagavan. If we're thinking like that, then we haven't really understood Bhagavan. And if we haven't understood Bhagavan, we won't understand, we won't have a very deep understanding of anything.
Go on to the next question.
Yes.
Is our self-inquiry accelerated or made easier by being physically present in Ramana Ashram, especially, for example, in the Old Hall and Skanda Ashram? Is it easier to practice Atma-vichara in these places?
It's very difficult to say. We need to slowly move away from dependence on external circumstances. That is, we are aware I am, whatever the circumstances we may be in. So we shouldn't depend upon external circumstances. But at the same time, we can't deny the power of Bhagavan's presence in, for example, in the Old Hall or in the form of Arunachala. So we can't. Yes, we may derive some help, but we shouldn't depend on these external things. That's why one of the teachings about Arunachala, Bhagavan stressed very much, mere thought of Arunachala will give liberation. That is to emphasize, but we don't have to be physically present there. I'm not saying being physically present there I mean, I have the good fortune to live there for 20 years. That was, I wouldn't have understood all that I've understood if it hadn't been for that. But ultimately, nothing, where we are meant to be is determined by prarabdha. So Bhagavan knows what is best for us. So, but wherever we may be in the world, Arunachala is ever there in our own heart, shining as I. So all we need to do is to turn our attention towards him. That's a real satsanga. Bhagavan often used to say, Atman alone is sat. So the best satsanga is Atma-sanga. Atma-sanga means attending to ourself, attending to our own being. And that we can do anywhere. That's why Bhagavan ends the last paragraph of Nana. Bhagavan says, if one's self arises, everything rises. If one's self subsides, everything subsides. To the extent to which it's very difficult to translate this sentence, to the extent to which we walk subsidingly, that means to the extent to which we live our life and conduct ourselves inwardly subsiding, to that extent it is good. If one can curb the mind, that means if we stop the mind going outwards, wherever we may be, we may be. That's his conclusion. So place doesn't, I mean, there is something special in Tiruvannamalai. The form of Arunachala is very special. The presence of Bhagavan in Ramanashram is very special. But we need not depend on these things. If we have the good fortune to go there and spend some time there, well and good. But if many of us are not able to go for one reason or another, various circumstances or whatever, but we are never apart from we are never anywhere away from that, because that is ever in our heart. In Ramana Sannidhi Murai, Murugan says the whole universe is Ramanashram, because there's not a place in the universe you can find where Bhagavan is not present. So Murugan lived most of his life in Tiruvannamalai, but he recognized that Bhagavan actually is present everywhere. And he's most intimately present in our own heart as I. So if we want to have Ramana Sangha, we need to hold on to I. That is the truest and best Ramana Sangha.
There are two more questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, Ramana feels like my guru, but I found learning from and sitting with other teachers who are still in the body and who others may consider to be their gurus to be useful in understanding Ramana's teachings better. Sometimes these teachings may contradict aspects of Ramana's teachings, but I mostly overlook these parts. While doing this, I still consider Ramana to be the Sadguru and view these other gurus as acharyas, as teachers. Is this the correct approach?
Who am I to judge? Really, if we really understood Bhagavan, we won't feel the need for any other teachers. But different people are, I mean, who are we to, we each have to decide for ourselves ultimately. But yeah, it's who we each have to find for ourselves. So I can't really pass judgment on that, but I can only say from my own experience, Murugan put it very beautifully. When someone, after Bhagavan had left the body, sometime in the 1950s, some devotees were planning to go on a pilgrimage tour of India to visit many holy places in North India and everything. And they tried to persuade Murugan to accompany them. And Murugan had no interest in going anywhere. So they said, but we can go to so many very holy places, and there's so many, we can have darshan in so many places. Murugan said, I have seen the sun. My eyes have been blinded. I can't see anything else. So if we've really understood Bhagavan, we will not be, we will find no attraction in any other teachers or teachings.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Yes, I think the question was sort of while one is still on the path, and it's sometimes
We're all
helpful.
still on the path, but it depends how deeply we're going into the path. But we each have to follow what is right for us. Bhagavan is in the heart of each of us, and he's guiding us at our own level. So, yeah, who are we to pass judgment on any of these things?
The last question, Michael, is if I'm not mistaken, Sadhu Om has said something to the effect that when attention is perfectly focused on the I, the dissolution of the ego occurs immediately in a split second. Can you say anything more about this?
Yes. I mean, that is when we are practicing self-investigation, we are trying to keep our attention fixed on ourselves, but we are not. He explained it in terms of turning 180 degrees. It's not literally turning 180 degrees, but this is a metaphorical way of seeing it. Now our attention is facing outwards towards the world. Towards the world means not only the physical world, the world of thoughts and feelings and everything, all phenomena. Our attention is turned towards phenomena. We are trying to turn our attention 180 degrees back to face ourselves. When we turn our attention 180 degrees back to face ourselves, we thereby cease to be aware of anything else. But most of the time, we're not turning our attention 180 degrees. We may be turning 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, whatever. To the extent to which we turn our attention towards ourselves, other things withdraw into the background of our awareness. And when we turn the full 180 degrees, then we are aware of ourself alone, nothing else. And only one moment of turning 180 degrees is sufficient. Because then when our attention is fully focused on fully fixed on ourselves, we thereby cease to be aware of anything else. So then we're aware only of ourselves. Being aware only of ourselves is pure awareness. And as soon as we experience ourselves as pure awareness, we thereby cease to be ego. So only one moment, not even a split second, that is no time. I mean, it's beyond time. Just one moment we turn our attention towards ourselves completely, the full 180 degrees, we are finished. Sometimes he used to develop that analogy further. He would say, when you turn the full 180 degrees, you immediately get caught by a clutch, and you cannot turn back again. That clutch is the clutch of grace. That's another, again, it's metaphorical, obviously, but it means that once we've turned our attention fully towards ourselves, ego is dissolved. We are completely lost in that. We are swallowed completely. As Bhagavan says in Nuludunaptu, Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing, or being food is seeing. So only when we are completely swallowed, then that is the end. And we are completely swallowed only when we turn that full 180 degrees. So all our practice is the more we practice this, the more we can't measure how much we're turning. If you ask someone, are you turning 10 degrees or 20 degrees or 30 degrees, there's no way of answering that, because it's something that can't be measured. But the more we practice, the more the more our Vishaya vasanas are weakened and our Sat vasana is strengthened. So the more we are thereby able to turn towards ourselves. So in order to reach that 180 degrees, we don't have to worry about, oh, when am I going to turn the full 180 degrees? Or can I do it now? All we need to do is attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more we will automatically be turning towards ourselves. And eventually, when we're fully ripe, we'll turn the full 180 degrees, and that is the end of the story. That is the eradication of ego, the dissolution of the mind. That is the final dissolution of mind. That is manonasa.
Thank you very much, Michael. It was wonderful session today.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, and I think we can close now. It's 4:30 in the UK.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We'll just close with Bhagavan's mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.